afternoon. I welcome all delegates, participants here and speakers to this last session. And I'm quite sure it's going to be very stimulating and interesting session, as we have very experienced speakers here with a very wide and interesting background. The theme for the session, as you can see, is digital transformation in oil and gas industry, emerging global energy landscape in 2030 and beyond. And we all know that this is the age for digitization. Experts already here in this field. And we also know that digitization so far that we've seen now in the last 15 years has improved efficiency in technology, get more accurate data, better interpretation, with greatly reduced cost and time. And the data which is dissipated or in a granular form get studied in more cohesive and deeper fashion, and we get in-depth analysis, better results. And this is, we see, is affecting the entire value chain. I mean, you see this kind of dramatic effect in oil sector from exploration, production, refining, marketing, and even the consumer studies, as you see that. And it helps, as I said, in improving efficiency and price reduction, and develops new business models. The same part of our theme is also what's likely to happen, our thoughts on it, on landscape in 2030 and beyond. But that is a very vast topic. I think we cannot keep on talking about that topic till cows come home in the evening. So what we suggest that it may be more interesting, if you all agree, that we hear the speakers first, and then we come down to this area of landscape 2030 and beyond, including some discussion and then question answers. Okay? So with that outline, we start now with Mr. Pramod Jain, CEO Computer Modeling Group Canada. Thank you, Mr. Jain. A very positive note, a very encouraging presentation, and your thought of participation in India. We welcome that. Ravi Bastia's slide was to basically jolt us out of our slumber. India is not really a snail. The government in the last 7 to 8 years has done a lot of very far-reaching steps they've taken now, even in the oil and gas sector. So India is certainly on the move, but yes, we are nowhere near a cheetah or the rabbit, but we are willing to be there soon. Okay, Mr. Sushant Rabra, we can have your talk. Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Sushant Rabra. Very interesting. I think we will be dwelling on these topics towards the end of this session, I think, in length. We'll all participate in that as we go along, because this is very apt to this theme for our session. I'll now request Mr. Mehrotra to make his presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Viren Mehrotra. You know, Schlumberger, most of you know, is one of the oldest company working in India. I think about 16 years ago, I think Oil India celebrated 50 years of Schlumberger's presence in Assam, where every well was initially being done by Schlumberger. Of course, now we have many more companies, including Oil India, of course. There's a lot of work there also. So Schlumberger has been very much in India, and very interesting presentation. Thank you. May I now request Mr. Neeraj Sethi to make his presentation. Thank you. We have a few minutes left now in this session. Basically, we like to concentrate on emerging global energy landscape in 2030 and beyond. This is concerning digital transformation, obviously, which we've been discussing. I'd like to flag some of the issues here from the emerging scenario from geological point of view in just next few minutes, and then we'll go over to digital transformation in future, what's going to happen now. The aspect that worries me personally most, and I'm sure that most of you perhaps are aware of this, that we're importing 80 to 85% of our energy requirement from outside, which obviously has serious security issues. And also, in the long term, it may even have economic consideration also, how long we can sustain that kind of load. As you're aware that the current government has handled the Ukraine-Russian war from Indian point of view extremely well, and we are getting oil at discounted price from Russia. So the very severe blow which should have come to us because of what the OPEC country have done was partly obviated because of that deal with the Russians that our government managed to make now. So, I mean, in the long term, this kind of dependability on foreign oil and gas is just not viable. And I'm sure that DGH and Ministry are very actively, the last 7-8 years, they have been very, very active now. And you only mentioned one point about the data repository. DGH and Ministry have taken many new steps now. Many blocks have been offered, fields have been offered, gas pricing has been liberalized, and many economic reforms have been made now. So I will not touch on those issues, but one aspect that worries me is that DGH and the industry made a study recently where our prognosticated reserves, which are reserves in the ground, they increased to 42 billion tons. Earlier, they were supposed to be 28 billion tons in 1994-95. But we have not seen any commensurate increase in reserve accretion. If you have doubled your prognosticated reserves in a matter of 3 years or 4 years, when you drill more wells after surveys, you should see some reserve accretion coming up now. When I was DGH, we started this in 95, 96, 97, and by 1999, we started adding a lot more in our reserves. Till 1999, our reserve accretion average for the previous 10 years was only 118 million tons. But because of NELP round 2, 3, and 4, this became 168 million tons in 2001 and 2, 280 million tons in 2002 and 3, 310 million tons in 2004. And then when I retired after that, by 2005, it crossed 400. So from 118 of the previous 10 years, we went as much as 400 million tons every year. So we saw commensurate more accretion coming because of higher activity of exploration. Now, DGH has done a wonderful job recently, completed national seismic data acquisition, which should open a number of new basins. We have got 10 to 11 basins which don't produce anything. And this kind of survey was ideal for that, to find out how much sediments we have, what kind of sediments we have. I'm not too sure, but hopefully in the next 2-3 years, we'll see some result from there. Other aspect is that we produced, perhaps some of you know that, most of our oil, world over, the oil 60 to 65%, about 60% comes from older rocks, Mesozoic and Paleozoic. In India, we only produce 4 to 5% oil from Mesozoic and Paleozoic, although we have a lot of Mesozoic and Paleozoic rocks available. Tertiary rocks, which are younger rocks, are not so prevalent on the surface, but deep down we have a lot more Mesozoic and Paleozoic. So far, we are not able to do a very great job in these older rocks. So there is a lot of future lies in this area now. Then we have prospects below Deccan traps. Almost 16% of our country is covered by traps. West coast, offshore, hinterland of India, all covered by Deccan trap. And we have a lot of sediments below Deccan trap. We have drilled some wells, we have found sediments up to 3 or 4 kilometers deep into valleys there. but so far, at least we should have some gas production from there coming in this area now. CBM, coal bed methane, we have established 9 TCF reserves so far. I think the reserves are basically about 12 TCF now, which I was calculating the other day. And the resource of CBM is 1.3 trillion cubic meters. 1.3 trillion cubic meters, I'm not talking a million cubic meters. So we are not making much dent in CBM yet. Production is around 2.5 million cubic meters now, will reach soon 4 million cubic meters, but we have potential of producing CBM between 30 to 50 million cubic meters if we put all the coal blocks which are available, which are not being mined for CBM drilling. And we should do it by now, another area now. Shale gas I'm not touching because it got certain problems. Now gas hydrate. We have managed to map on the west coast of India, or east coast of India, sorry, in KG Basin offshore, one of the best CBM reserves anywhere in the world. Thick in sand grains and sandstone reservoir, which are producible. And this is something we have got supposed to be something like 1,400 million cubic meters, a trillion cubic meters of reserves trapped in this kind of hydrates. And this requires some more effort now. Hopefully in future, something will happen there also. Then we have old, mature producing field. We hear a lot about this thing now. But these producing field have still a lot of reserves. When we started doing 3D in them, we found a lot more reserves. A lot of oil companies are perhaps present here, which have done 3D, and they have found small pockets of oil and gas reserves in Cambay and also in Assam. So all the low-hanging fruits have been found in these mature fields, which are shallow fields or bigger fields have been found, but the subtle traps, combination traps, which we are still finding now, and will continue to find in the next 20, 30 years also now. And another aspect of the mature field is we should increase our recovery factor. For example, Mumbai High, our recovery factor was around 24, 23. We're planning to take it to 45 by drilling more wells. I think eventually we went around 30 or 35%. I'm just saying by my old memory, by the time I left DGH. So a lot more to be done now. Now, world over, they are from sand reservoir, especially in Canada and USA. They are producing 60, 65, 70% of recovery factor from sand reservoirs. Our average is around 25 now, 30, approaching 28, 30, 32, in that range now. So a lot more we can do now by increasing the recovery factor now. I'm talking of future now, coming years now. We are not finding enough strategic reserves overseas. If you're not able to produce sufficient in India, it's quite obvious. We should look for strategic reserves overseas, except for Russia, USSR, where a lot of our companies have gone the last 12, 15 years now. We're not able to diversify. A number of countries went into various problems like Venezuela and Libya. It's no fault of any of the Indian companies here now. They can't help it now. But we still diversify and get strategic reserve outside now. We're thinking of doing this battery-driven cars now. But what about lithium? We should be looking for lithium reserves. I don't want to mention any one country. Some countries are doing very well now. I don't want to name any country here right now. They are getting lithium reserves. We should also look at, so we should look for strategic reserves. This is something in future we should also do. And of course, we come down now to renewables because we have to support decarbonization, zero emission, and this is where we are talking about our digitization, what's going to happen now. Current government, fortunately, has done a lot on renewables now. You may be hearing about that. And we are all very proud of their achievement. But I think a lot more has to be done because, as I said, this kind of 80-85% of dependence on overseas hydrocarbon, oil and gas, can't be allowed. And gas, we are talking a lot. The future India will produce more gas. We'll import more LNG. But gas, in my view, is also is only a via media because eventually we are looking for zero emission. Gas is also far less polluting, but it still has pollution. So ultimate answer is going to be now renewables in the form of solar and wind. And of course, as we are talking about here, I think future lies with chemical engineers. They have to break the water molecule, produce hydrogen, and create, as you mentioned now about this, you produce this digital periodic table. We can do a lot of things. So this is where the future lies now. I'd like to leave the floor open now for few questions. Time is almost up now, because I want you to tap the immense talent that we have in our speakers here by asking some questions, if you have any. Just 2 or 3 questions. Well, thank you very much. I think, as Mr. Neeraj Sethi has said, I think multiple choices will continue to happen till such time that technology is evolving all the time. Safety factors are being built in now. Rightly, lithium batteries have their own danger. But things are evolving. Wind energy is there, very much there, where you don't require a battery to store power for the time being. But of course, it can't replace solar in the long run, but it is very much there. And India is certainly working on this in a very big way now. Our offshore wind energy farms are also coming up now. On land, of course, Rajasthan, one of the areas where you have very strong breeze all the time because of the unique nature of Thar Desert. There will be very strong breezes there all the time in the daytime and also in the night. So, and it's a more or less barren area, so you can have huge wind farms there. So things are evolving, and future is bright. With that note, I'd like to close the session. Thank you very much for all of you for participating, and thank you all the speakers here. Thank you so much.